Thank you, George. I didn't get the 4-minute brief, but I'll be very brief. I am a proud Australian, and I am very proud of my Palestinian ancestry. Ladies and gentlemen, there are situations in history where I think you have to stand up and be counted. And I am here to challenge the Labor Party to stand up and be counted, to show leadership, to have vision, and to make right the wrongs that we have been a part of for over 7 decades. The Palestinians do not need our favour. They are not pleading for sympathy. They are not seeking our consent. They are a people like us Australians that long for independence and self-determination. Australia has a political and moral obligation to recognise Palestine. We were there in 1947 as one of the first nations to recognise the State of Israel. On the spot, right there, 1947. We have not fulfilled, however, the other 50% of that partition plan that we were a part of, to recognise the other state, the State of Palestine. 70 years on, I'm not sure what we're waiting for. And the Labor Party in 2015 at the last Labor conference also stated that if no progress is made in the ensuing 3 years, that it will consider joining other like-minded nations in recognising the State of Palestine. Well, here's the other challenge. I challenge anybody in the Labor Party to show me one bit of progress that has been made in the peace process over the last 3 years. So if we are true to what we heard 3 years ago, I'm not sure what we're waiting for. Let's think this through, if I may. I'd like you to consider the counter position. What will happen if Australia does recognise the State of Palestine? Is Israel going to move its embassy from East Canberra to West Canberra? Is it going to move to Tasmania or New Zealand? I'm not sure what the perception, what the fear is in the argument for recognition of Palestine. It seems to be an unfounded fear. Australia also has a moral obligation. I visited Palestine only 4 weeks ago, and I did not see a defeated people. I saw a very optimistic people that still stands very proud, that still fight for their human rights, for their just cause, and they still hold their head high despite the daily humiliation and intimidation. And I met some great Australians that refused to stand idle in those situations. I visited a military court with an Australian barrister who is now based in Palestine, and who, along with 7 other lawyers, mostly Europeans, represent Palestinian children in military detention. Those are children as young as 12 years of age, some girls, that are in Israeli military courts. You see, Palestinians have no access to Israeli civil courts. If you're a Palestinian, you're trialed in a military court. Most of those, 95% of those children, are facing a court because they have thrown stones at usually an Israeli Defense Force car. What I saw will challenge any human. Each child is brought in handcuffs and chains on their legs. They're brought in 4 at a time. It's a charade. They sit in front of an Israeli military judge. They have representatives. Some have lawyers. The lucky ones have a lawyer. Then I saw plead. These lawyers are pleading with these kids to plead guilty to the charges. Because if they don't, their case are usually deferred, and the average deferral is for 9 to 18 months. If they plead guilty, they get between 6 to 12 months in an Israeli jail. These are kids under 16 that serve time in an Israeli military jail. The kid I saw pleaded guilty. He was 14 years of age. His mother and father were sitting next to me. The tragic event is very distressing. It unfolds right in front of your eyes as an absolute horror movie. It is repeated every day. This is the life of the Palestinians we're talking about here today. At the conclusion of the 5-minute trial, it didn't last any more than 5 minutes, the mother rose to just hug her 14-year-old. Israeli soldier stands up and pulls them apart. She was not allowed to even touch her son. This is the life of a Palestinian today. It was an inhumane scene, as inhumane as anyone could imagine. The world is a very nasty place, ladies and gentlemen, if we as Australians do not rise in rage to protest this inhumanity. It is not acceptable to me as an Australian that my country is implicit in supporting a country that perpetrates this inhumanity onto the Palestinian people. Nelson Mandela said, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen to side with the oppressor. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have decided to side with the oppressor. Deferral and doing nothing is siding with the oppressor. Deferral is siding with the oppressor. The Labor Party of Australia, I challenge you to stand up and be counted. Give the Palestinians hope and recognise the state of Palestine. I cannot imagine what on earth are we waiting for. It must be time.